Okay, dokie. So now, this image is called They Pointed It at Me. They pointed it at me. And now, before I say to you anything about fingers, that's not really what I had in mind when I was looking at this image. Because when I was drawing it, I was under the impression of drawing really long noses and not at all fingers. But while I was drawing it, I had the feeling that what they would see in it would be fingers and not noses. So anyway, some time has passed, and there, I've made some hot chocolate. With cocoa powder, cacao powder, sugar, and spices. Anyway, I don't feel like talking that much right now because, I felt my spirit sinking. And then I need something to lift me up again. And whether it is noses you see or whether it is fingers you see in this image doesn't really matter, is what I believe. Because you can sniff out liars, just like you can sniff out people who are blaming you for their misery. So if somebody tries to make you the culprit of his life and blame you for everything that has happened, that may sometimes be people from relationships that want you to be the bad one. That might be all kinds of people. The way I usually do it, because you can sense it, and that's why noses and fingers is actually quite, they go together quite well, because you can sniff out emotions, you can sniff out bad vibes. Your nose, I'm not quite yet sure how to get my nose to a state of, because sometimes I feel like I don't really breathe enough through my nose. And there are certain practices, of course, in which you can clean out your nose, and that is breath of fire, where you breathe like this, which I probably should be doing at least once a day. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to do breath holds or anything. You can just do that, in and out through the nose, and it cleans out a lot of stuff. And one way, in a way, is rapé, but rapé also has the negative effect that it also clogs up the nose because you're blowing a very fine powder into your nose. I mean, it's like blowing cinnamon, ground cinnamon into your nose. And at the same time, you can also take a handful of water and just like suck it in with your nose and then blow it out again. I sometimes do that under the shower. But I think what really helps is this breath of fire, in and out through the nose. And by contracting your stomach, like you breathe in and out into the stomach. And that's something you can practice also then. And I think you can literally sniff out liars just by trusting your feeling and letting your nose pick up their vibrations. I think it's possible. Because unmasking lies, your own lies and the lies of people, has mostly to do with intuition, but also with paying attention. So you also have to really pay good attention to the people in your surroundings that actually make you take the blame for their mistakes. You know, sometimes people do something and then they try to make you look like the one that is at fault. And that gives them a feeling of superiority. And I just, without I don't allow this kind of behavior towards me anymore. And that means that people who do this are gonna be in for a treat of a bit of honesty, and not honesty that is supposed to just hurt them, but the truth. So if somebody's constantly on my case and bickering at me about where I'm going wrong, why I shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, well, then I'm going to say at one point to that person, listen, you know how I am. You cannot change me, or you will not change me, or I will not allow you to change me into something that I am not. Because I am the way that I am. And if you keep complaining about me, like, why do you even spend time with me then? Like, why do you spend time with me if you constantly have a go at me for what I do, because I am the way that I am? I am the way that I am. But if you do that, and you keep nagging at me and trying to change me because you're in a bad mood, and you'd rather have it that I'm different than you muster some courage and change yourself, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to give you like a slap in the face at some point, just with words, because that's all it takes. I'm probably going to build you up to it. And then at one point, I'm just going to look you in the eyes and I'm going to tell you that you're a lazy asshole. Because the only reason why you're complaining all the time is because you're a lazy asshole. You see, I can do this as well. It's not just up for you to point your finger at me. I can do the same, I just don't want to do it. Right? I don't want to go around telling people what their flaws are, because that also means that I have to deal then with their inability to accept it. I've been in that situation already a couple of times where people were just on my back for like whatever. Doesn't matter. And in the end, I started doing things that they were supposed to do. It's like living with a family of, I don't know if you can call them healers, right? They did like ceremonies and stuff. And I lived there with them for 2 weeks, but also was more often there. And we were quite close. And if you get closer to people, you also get to know them quite adequately. And if you look, you're going to find things or see things that might feel a bit disturbing because, despite all these beautiful words they use to place themselves as people, who are so good and saintly. When you live with them, you're going to pick up a few things that don't quite match the image, which means that they're actually not the way they put themselves to be, but they are like this when people are around. But when these people are gone, they're quite nasty with each other. And of course, if you have healers in this kind of world, they want to do good, but they neglect themselves and their own needs. So they just sacrifice themselves for other people who don't appreciate their help. And that's why my standpoint is, teach people to help themselves, right? If somebody would want to do, I don't know if I'm going to do these things, but I'm pretty sure I will. Whatever, some kind of ceremony, it doesn't really matter what you do. It can be a cacao ceremony. I don't just do this with anybody. All right, I do rapé on my own. And I'm preparing myself sometimes, maybe, to give it to other people. But you cannot just get rapé. No, you have to work for it. Which means, because rapé is like a fist in your fucking face. That's what rapé is. Like when I do this alone, sometimes it's complete knockout. I mean, I've had moments where I felt like I just wrestled with some kind of tiger or something. I mean, this is quite strong stuff. You could call that some kind of warrior, I don't know, medicine, some kind of warrior remedy, a tool for warriors. And it's really like Mother Nature's fist right in your face, or more like into your stomach, like BAM! And then you're gonna spit venom, literally spit venom. And so, when I would do such things with people, they first would have to prove to me that they can take it. Which means they have to do some things at least to show that they have the right mentality to work with such things. Which means going swimming in the ocean in winter. Which means, I don't know, doing things out of the ordinary, challenging your own self by going out of your comfort zone. And that doesn't just mean taking cold showers. That means outgrowing yourself in whatever ways. And then you can work with psychedelics. First, you have to put in the work into your body and into your mind to get into the mindset of, I want to fucking do it. And that's why if you live your life pointing your fingers at all kinds of people, this guy's shit, he's shit and that's shit, and he's talking too much and he's talking not enough, and he smells bad and he looks bad and I don't like his style, well, you're gonna have a tough time with me. And I'm gonna make it a tough time with you. You can count on it. But that's of course why people would come to me. And that's why people often came to me, because take it or leave it, they knew what they were getting when they were trying to spar with me. So the last person I told into his face what he tried to wiggle away from, which is that he may be lazy and maybe he is an asshole. I could see in his face that he wanted to hear it. Sometimes people come to you if you are an honest person and straightforward, and they come to you because they want to hear it. But the thing is, you can only give that to a person that you respect. And because you think that telling that person what they need to hear is going to help them. Because that gives them the chance. Because maybe they've been telling themselves, oh, you're really good, right? You're the best person there is. You're doing everything that's good. But maybe they are feeling at the bottom of their heart that something's a bit weird. That while these voices try to convince them, that they're the best person out there, it's like people taking cocaine. It gives you the feeling you're the best guy ever. Because you're constantly in a state of this kind of orgasmic feeling. But it turns you also into an asshole. Because you think you know everything. You don't want to learn from anyone anymore. And you think you're the best guy, but you treat everybody like shit. And if such a person comes to you and pushes you to the point where you actually tell them, listen, this is how I see you. You're a lazy asshole. Well, that's quite a fist in the face. But it also depends on how you say it and why you say it. You may be reluctant to say it, but you say it anyway, but with a different spirit. Not with the I want to destroy you, but I want to give you something to work with. Because now you have to face that you've heard it from somebody you respect, right? That's an act of courage, but also respect between two people. I tell you the truth, although I know that this is going to be painful for you. Some people, they tell the truth because they want to hurt people. Right? You don't just tell the truth to anybody. You only tell it to people that can deal with it and that can grow by hearing the truth about the way they really are. Because the way I've learned it is that most people, they live in this kind of fantasy. I'm really good. And then they walk around pointing their fingers and I don't know how you say that. Ruffling their noses or something, right? They act like, they smell like heaven while everybody smells like shit. That's how some people are. But if you are like this, you're the worst of them all. If you judge people for what they are, then what are you to judge them? Then you're just as bad. Because you think you're better than them. But the truth is, in the end, nobody's better than anyone. Everybody just has a different place in life. And my place seems to be to sit here and talk and create content to make people realize that in the end we're all the same, right? So I cannot go around and point my finger at people because maybe they don't want to take, whatever substance I claim can heal them. I cannot say these people are evil. And I also believe, I shouldn't be able to say, you can only talk on my platform about certain remedies, I put that in air quotes, that have been sanctified by certain people, probably like state or government, and then you can walk around and on my platform, you can only say what's good about these things. But if you question them or say something bad about them, you cannot talk here anymore. But you claim something like freedom of speech. That's kind of phony, right? That's kind of fishy. It's kind of weird stuff that you're doing. You're acting like good, but then, you're favoring certain people, which means you're disfavoring other people. And the way I see it is, I talk about certain topics to the people that want to hear it. That's it. Right? If I were to have, or when I will have my own show, I talk to the people that want to come and listen to me directly. That's how it's going to be. Nothing more, nothing less. I give to the people that want it. And by now, the people that know me through sight, they know what they're getting when they're spending time with me. And still they're coming back. But I can only teach people to a certain point. You have to do it yourself at a certain degree. And that means when you work with my content, whether you listen to all of these videos, whether you read my books, whether you look at the images maybe on Instagram, whether you read the stories on Medium, is there anything else? Or you listen to my podcast, doesn't really matter in the end, because what's important is that you use my content and become active. That you have to start looking at your life. You have to start pointing your finger at yourself from now on. Because you are the center of your life. And if you keep pointing your finger at all the people trying to sniff out liars, that's not really gonna help anyone. It's just gonna make a lot of... just create more confusion, because you're blaming people that have nothing to do with the way you feel. You have to do with how you feel, because you're the one feeling it. So you have to start feeling the stuff, and that means you have to point inwards at yourself. And that means instead of projecting all the stuff you feel onto all the people and saying, you're bad and you're bad and you're bad and I don't like you and you're bad, you point your finger at yourself. And that means when you listen to my episodes or read my books or you watch, Thor, Love and Thunder, you don't try to find meaning in the movie. You try to find meaning in yourself by watching the movie and reflecting it back on yourself. And that means everybody around you just becomes a mirror in which you can see yourself. But you're going to try to look at the things that you hate about them. And that's the difficult part. But you don't hate them. You just acknowledge that you feel hate towards persons. But what you feel, the hatred you feel about other people, is just the hatred you feel in yourself. They're just showing it to you. And that means if I'm talking to you about whatever topic and it makes you angry, you have to think about, wait, what did he say that caused me to feel angry or annoyed? You may listen to me and at one moment you feel like, oh, what a beautiful voice he has. And in the next you think like, what a fucking asshole. And then you wait, why do I send him such bad vibrations? Could be something that you think. And then the next step should be, why do I feel like this? And if you don't remember what I said, you just skip back a couple of minutes, you're like maybe one, and then you listen to it again. And maybe next time you're going to pay more attention to it. So I'm quite aware of the things that are happening in the space around me. so that when when an emotion comes up, I'm usually quite quick at catching it, looking at it from all kinds of perspectives, right? If I hate somebody, I don't just keep hating them. I keep looking at the situation between us that resounded, is that a word, into distance between us, and then I'm trying to dissolve it by understanding how I feel, how the other person felt. I'm looking at everything there is. And when I've done that, I'm usually at a point where, there's like a transition. First you hate somebody. Maybe you first love them. And then suddenly you hate them. And then you start looking at the situation and what happened and how you feel. And that's probably what you call empathy. You have to understand how you feel about it. And then you understand how the other person feels about it and why they feel like this about it. So you also have to take in whatever you know about the people, you're trying to hate. Because why do you try to hate people? Because, you try to falsely love yourself. Because you're trying to tell yourself that you did everything good. And so everybody else must be bad. And when you do this, you're going to get to a point, believe it or not, where you're going to hate yourself for understanding how the other person felt. Which then means, first you hate. Let's say you have a friend and you got in a fight with each other. And then you don't talk with each other for weeks and months and however long. And then you really hate them. And then sometimes you get to this place where you try to love them again, and then you see them and you think, but I understand why why it happened, and I feel so bad, and blah, blah. And suddenly you feel bad then, which means you shift from hating the person to hating yourself for treating them so badly. But that means now you're feeling love for the other person again, but you lost your love for yourself again. So you see, the end point should always be you are at peace with yourself and at peace with the universe and with everybody in it. Which means you have to look at all the relationships you had in your life, whatever nature. And you have to look at all of these things, and then you have to look at it until you see the person, at the other end of that relationship. And you understand why they feel the way they felt. It's like when the little prince gets annoyed of his flower and he leaves to look for other flowers until he realizes, holy shit, that was the only flower that is really my flower. And then he tries to get back to her. But he first needed that distance to first understand what the flower meant to him. And sometimes, like in my case, some of the people that I would call friends, sometimes I needed some distance. And maybe for the rest of my life. I cannot say that yet. Sometimes I just leave it up to life, Maybe I'm going to meet them again. But I'm trying to incorporate this kind of insight into my life where I say, they're not going anywhere. I've spent my time with them, but now it's also the time to live my own life, and for them it's the time to live their life. And for all I know, in some place, I'm still playing frisbee with him. Every day. I'm still in the place where I play frisbee with him. I'm still in the same place where I spent time in kindergarten with people. But I have to work for it to get there. And for that, I have to first look at all the things that make me heavy and that I hate about myself and everybody else and whatever. You know, I remember there was a girl in, I think it was maybe my 3rd grade, and she was standing in the middle of the schoolyard, and there was a whole bunch of people standing around her. And she was literally pointing her finger outwards, and then she was turning in a circle at everybody and said, "Your mothers are all whores." And everybody got angry, of course, and she got a lot of negative feedback. But if you think about it, it's actually quite funny. Because maybe she was right. I don't know. You know, what is a whore? I don't know. So, why ever she said that, well, maybe she just wanted attention. Well, she certainly got that. Well, that's the girl that said this and this. Well, that's just how it is. Anyway, so that's kind of my take on things with pointing fingers, that you have to realize that if you point your finger at somebody else, you're gonna get some kind of feedback. And it's probably gonna be, I don't know, some kind of anger maybe. But I've realized, working with people and their emotions for quite a while now, that some people, they try to blame you for doing all kinds of things because they actually blame themselves, but they're too afraid to admit that to themselves. And then sometimes it's important with some people to remind them that they helped to create this situation. Because if you don't remind them, they just keep running away from you. And that just makes me very angry. Because then I have to chase them around the globe because they're too chicken to admit to themselves that they may have done something wrong, or that they are cowards indeed. You know, a lot of people are real cowards, but they act like super tough. And as soon as you go to them, they just run from you. You know, I've had this with women all the time. They just run away from me. You know, like I'm like some kind of, I don't know what. Like the worst kind of person in the world. That's just how it is. And that's just the way I've seen it. I see it pointing fingers and stuff. Sniffing out liars. Clean out your own life first.